Good afternoon, Dobry den. This is my second visit to beautiful city Prague, and I'm very happy for that occasion, and thank you very much for university and the faculty for enabling me to visit Czech Republic and Prague in particular a second time with the purpose of presentation, important presentation. And first of all, and from the beginning, I would like to congratulate you with launching a very important program on genocide studies. My lecture will be divided into several parts. I understand, and you understand also, that within 1 hour or 2 hours is not possible to give all the information. That's why the first lecture, the first interaction will be just outline of the problem, of the topic, and leaving, of course, some time for interactive section, question and answers. I will be happy if you raise some problematic moments in the lecture or the topic, and we can communicate also during the question and answer section at the end of the lecture. But this will be an important part of today's occasion. First of all, I would like to ask a very general question. What is genocide studies and why it is important? First of all, genocide studies and decision to be involved in such a hard topic, which is very hard, very difficult, from personal level, on a group level, and in general. This is crucial decision. I made very crucial decision to be involved in the field. Already 9 years I am in the field, which is very hard psychologically. It's very hard for human being to learn on a daily basis, to read eyewitness accounts, to watch to the faces of people gone, millions gone. That's why let me to say, first of all, that you made a crucial decision. This is a decision to start a mission. I'm not exaggerating. You are human beings, you are young, you want to live with a happy life, you want to see colors of this life, but you decided to deal with the fate of millions. People who were targeted, people who were unlucky to be born in a given space and given time. They are Armenians, they are Hereros, Jews, Rwandans, Bosnians, Cambodians. They are millions. Why genocide studies is important actually nowadays? We check every day the news channels. CNN, CBS, or local. If you look attentively, maybe it's a general picture in every country, the first news line, first at least 3 and 5 news programs show disasters, human natural disasters. And we became victims of that attack, human-made disasters and natural-made disasters. But let's focus on a human-made disaster. 100 years passed since Armenian genocide occurred, which is still denied by the Turkish government, but still exactly in the very same places, mass killings and atrocities occur. We see on TV bloody pictures in color, video footages, how people in group are shot dead or cut into pieces. Very naturalistic. This is really tragedy. 100 years after, humanity still face mass atrocities. In exactly the same places, Raqqa, Meskene, Deir Zor, for Armenian air, those are the geographical spots in Syria associated with the mass atrocities and mass graves. Now everyone here, those places, the names of places, deal with Christian massacres or Yazidi massacres. Why it's happening? Why we, having the UN Convention adopted in 1948, still mankind, humanity lives in the age of genocide? Something is wrong. Maybe it's word politics, maybe it's double standard approach. Maybe we, in the age of modernity, still live with the laws of savagery. Still we kill each other because the other is different, because other things different, behave different. He or she has different colors. That's why it's important. Your work in the future, your involvement in the field will be crucial mission for everyone, but first of all for you. That's why while involving in this field, you will see human tragedy. You will experience that. Tragedy of one man, tragedy of millions. Genocide is not statistics. How many were killed, how many tortured, how many escaped. Genocide is a tragedy of people, and every people here is a unit. One tragedy, studying tragedy of one person, learning the story of one survivor or one who was killed or suffered because of genocide and mass crimes, it's important for you. Your life will be changed, don't be scared. Your thinking, lifestyle also will be changed. You will speak about the topic, your friends will hear the stories, you are amazed reading this story or dealing with this fate. You will talk about this in your families, but don't worry, I don't want to scare you. Again, referring to the main definition I said from the very beginning. Your work, your study will be crucial mission for everyone. And your work, your activity will be important part of global strategy and global fight for very important task, prevention. Prevention of genocides, prevention of war crimes, prevention of mass atrocities. It doesn't matter that it's happening in North Syria or in Ukraine or in Africa. You have to think that it's important to work on prevention of genocide anytime it could appear in any places. So this is just introduction about your mission. It's not just a study, it's not just academic work and involvement. This is a crucial mission to prevent the evil of humanity and human history of mankind to occur, genocide. Genocide is ultimate crime in the world history. We live still in the age of genocide, and we have to fight for prevention. And you are the soldiers in this fighting, in this war. While speaking about Armenian genocide, in my lecture I will focus on main parts, important parts of the history and memory, but not dealing only with Armenian history and memory. From the title you know that I will touch also Greek and Assyrian story, which is also inseparable part of a general Ottoman strategy of genocide and elimination, which occurred in the beginning of the 20th century and under the cover of First World War. Now, you will see this site from above. This is Armenian Genocide Memorial, just foreground, and on the right-hand side you will see museum complex, which was renovated and extended this year in occasion of centennial of Armenian Genocide. Memorial was built during the Soviet time. It was very hard to get the permission to erect such a memorial during the Soviet time, because Armenian Genocide events of 1915, it's beyond of Soviet experience of suffering. It's beyond of any civil war, great patriotic war. It is not associated with Soviet history and memory. But propaganda tried by all means to link the story, the history of Armenian genocide, focusing on the revival of Armenians in the Soviet family of nations. So Armenians got the permission. It was very hard. And even First Secretary General of Armenia, who was survivor of Armenian genocide, who lobbied the construction of this memorial, he paid heavy price. Next year, when memorial was under construction, he was removed from the office, called being nationalistic. But now the memorial exists. Important part is the 12-block construction, the place of mourning, and the 40 meters high obelisk, symbolizing continuity of the life. So this is the main memorial. Worldwide, we have 300 Armenian genocide memorials, and only one so far genocide museum. Why those sites are important? We deal with the history and memory, and memorial sites are important to preserve that memory, because preservation of memory, memorialization or museization is memory, is not just putting the story in a history and saying genocide is about just the issue of a history. Now, referring to the official propaganda cliché of modern Turkish leadership, they always say that, well, Armenian genocide, it's an issue historians must deal with. It's a history. We don't want to bring it back and put in the agenda of world international relations, or it's important to recognize, it's not important to study. Let historians decide it's happened or not. And why they say this. Just imagine one situation. This is maybe not a good example, but vividly will show what is the situation around Armenian genocide in a local politics in the Middle East, especially in Turkish-Armenian relations. Just imagine Czech Republic is blocked by Germany and Austria. And Germany says, you know, Bohemia is a part of Austrian Republic. That's why I block your borders. The same is from Austrian side. The situation with Armenia is the same. Armenia now in a blockaded situation. Turkey still, it's already 25 years, Turkey blocked the establishment of interstate relations. There is no bilateral relation between Armenia and Turkey. The last border from the Cold War era still exists. It's closed. In Europe, there is a border which is still closed. It's a Turkish-Armenian border closed from the Turkish part. Why the situation is this way? Why border is closed? It's because of Turkish preconditions. Turkey put 3 preconditions to open the border and establish bilateral relation with Armenia. First precondition is to forget about genocide. Second is refrain from any territorial claims from Turkey. You know that historical Armenia, a huge portion of historical Armenia is on the territory of Turkey now. It's a result of genocide and the cleaning of Armenian element from the homeland. And the third precondition connected with Azerbaijan. Now, why I brought Austria, Czech Republic, and German example? Because modern Turkish and Azerbaijani politics, they made their policy towards Armenia under the slogan, one nation, two states. You can name it as a racist, but you can imagine that based on ethnic kinship, both countries blockaded another country, small landlocked Armenia, and one of the problematic moments is related to the history and memory, more particularly the memory of genocide. Why Turkish government say forget about this? Because modern Turkey has a good experience of forgetting the past. When Atatürk came to power, they erased part of the memory. What is Ottoman, they erased, absolutely. They started from the new page. Now it's very difficult for Turkish society to refer what was before the Republican period. That part is strictly restricted. Still, memory and politics of memory are heavily under control of the government, mostly because of Armenian genocide and many other problematic issues in Turkish history. We have the case when history and memory and politics of memory regulated what you have to remember and what not. Government decide. We had a typical situation with Soviet Union. it was controlled. The past was controlled. This is another danger in the state building process. When you keep some parts omitted in the public memory or general memory, but you cannot hide history and memory. Now, we have very interesting situation with Turkish visitors in Genocide Museum. When we reopened actually, Genocide Museum, we extended it 2.5 times. Every day we have Turkish visitors. We are surprised for this dynamic. And mostly they are young people. And young Turks who visit Armenia, blockaded Armenia through Georgia, because there is no direct connection between Armenia and Turkey. Through Georgia, they visit Armenia, and they identify themselves that they are Turks from Turkey or Germany or Netherlands or elsewhere. And they say, we are Turk, and you have to look their faces and into eyes after the visit. Silence. This is the important moment when you witness what they think. It's not necessary to ask questions. What you feel? Did you change your opinion? That silence and the faces speak themselves. Why those Turks? There are hundreds of visitors this year. Why they prefer to come? Because they know that Armenian genocide is also important part of Turkish history and memory and modern identity developed. That's why they come to learn the history which is hidden, which is restricted and prohibited in their country. This is an interesting phenomenon with the politics of memory, with the control or attempt of government control of the memory politics. That's why we also must be ready to tell the story of the descendants of perpetrators, but not to use hate speech, not to be political. It's hard, but you have to also deal with the perpetrator side. It's hard to be a descendant of victims. I have my story. I personally heard that story from my grandma. From my both sides, I was born in second largest city in Armenia, but both sides, my roots are from Turkey, modern Turkey, from the city of Kars, which is very close to the Armenian-Turkish border. I was 6 years old when my grandmother, she was talking about the story, what happened, how she escaped, but I really witnessed and I live with the same experience she passed through. When I was 16 years old, in 1992, she died after 1 month suffering. It was mental suffering. 1 month we were not able to sleep, whole family, because there were nighttime shouting. She was shouting nighttime, saying, Turks are coming, run, run. So this was the childhood experience, horrors, suppressed. And we witnessed what she passed through. And this is personal matter. There are many, many stories in Armenia you can hear. Now, 60 to 70% of Armenia's population are those grandchildren of survivors of the genocide. But modern Turkey, the legal continuer of the Ottoman Empire, keep the border with the country called Republic of Armenia closed, putting the precondition, forget about your suffering, forget about the genocide, do not raise this anywhere, do not speak about this. It's inhuman. Now, I want to construct my following speech based on the slides. I found necessary to identify Armenia as a geographical unit, where it is. You can see Armenia is on the eastern part of the Europe. Armenia is a part of the European Council. It's a very small landlocked country. Historically, this is just brief historical outline. For you, that will be very interesting to have connection with the genocide story. Armenian name Armenia is mentioned in Persian inscriptions back in 7th century BC. It's one of the old civilizations, small but old and unique civilization in the world, survived civilization, because many civilizations gone, especially in our area, Babylonian, Assyrians, Hittites, Medians, etc. But Armenians survived somehow, and still we have statehood, very small, but we are on the map, let's say, put in this way. Since we are in theology department, some theological stressing in my lecture, you know, several important association of word Armenia with the Holy Bible. Armenia is mentioned as a kingdom of Ararat in the Holy Bible. Armenia is also place of paradise. If you read Genesis, 4 rivers originates from Armenia, and the paradise in the European maps located. You can see that right in the center of historical Armenia, paradise is identified where Adam and Eve appeared. Armenia also the place when the second time humanity get the chance to continue their life on the earth after the flood. You know, the Noah's Ark stationed on Arad, and Arad is now a symbol of Armenia and Armenians. In many European maps, medieval and New Ages, you will see this map of Armenia identifying as a place of paradise and the place where Noah's Ark stationed. Armenia is the first Christian state. We adopted Christianity in 301. 13 years before the Milano Edict. It's a main cathedral built in 303 in Echmiadzin, and this is Holy See, where Catholicos, head of Armenian Church, is residing. As I said, Armenia is a specific civilization. We have also specific characters. We writing system and characters from 405. Armenian bishop invented this specific alphabet while traveling in Egypt and Ethiopia in early 5th century. Now, returning back to the main topic. Every April 24, every year, nearly 1 million Armenians, it's nearly half of the population of Armenia, walk to the hill called Tzizernagabert. I showed the memorial, to lay a flower for praying and expressing the tribute to the genocide victims' memory. This is every day sent in April 24, every year. This is the first half of the day. At the end of the day, flowers will be 2 meters high, but still people keep going from early morning, 6 o'clock, until next day morning. This is the power of the memory. I'm always impressed. I think that every generation, when generation change, the memory is weakened, so no one will come. But every year I'm really impressed to see the human wave, human stream, endlessly walking to the hill, under heavy sun, under the rain. They come. They come because they remember. They come because they consider it's important to remember. They are silent. They visit the Armenian Genocide Museum for new exhibitions. And this is the power of the memory. Sometimes people, non-Armenians, say Armenian genocide is an important part of Armenian identity. It is at the same time correct, but it's not at the same time not. Armenian genocide is an important part of the memory to remember and pass the memory of experience of the genocide. But we never consider this as an important cornerstone of our identity. Sometimes there is such a wrong perception that we always speak about the Armenian genocide. No, there are a lot of identity markers defining who is Armenian, but the genocide is not in the first 3. But Armenian genocide is an agenda of world politics. There are process of international recognition, process of criminalization of the denial of Armenian genocide. Now it's in agenda of Bundestag. still again it's postponed because of Angela Merkel's visit to Turkey. Unfortunately, genocides also became a bargaining token in world politics. It's not only related to Armenian genocide, but all genocides sometimes became instrument for pressuring in order to get the political gains, political privileges, and this marginalized the very notion of the genocide. Genocide as an ultimate crime became also target of manipulation in world politics. We see the same in Rwandan case. We see the same in Balkan case. Even in modern times, still we talk to each other. I'm lecturing here, but something going on in the Middle East. You never know what will happen next, what group will be targeted next. This is the tragedy. Why it is happening? Maybe we couldn't learn lessons of other genocides, and particularly Armenian genocides. Now, I'm going to focus on important parts of Armenian genocide, what we understand while speaking Armenian genocide. What is this? What is the crime? How we can define it? What is the main part of the genocide, and how the destruction, what kind of mechanism and decision making was put in force in order to gain that ultimate goal, young Turkish leadership in Turkey implemented during the First World War. Genocide is a process. It's a process of decision making. It's not just someone decided to destroy Armenians or Jews. It's a process of decision making. The initial stage of genocide is to prepare for that crime. How to prepare? You have to get consensus or majority's approval in given society in order to start. In other words, you have to mobilize society, you have to prepare them for committing this, instrumentalizing everything for that purpose, and also securing mass participation. Mass participation directly in killing, looting, or mass participation in more neutral way. For example, not being, no any protest from the society, no voices will be against the crime to occur. In the Armenian genocide, we have pre-genocide period. You know, the main cause is that Armenians were subjects in a dominant Muslim empire. Ottoman Empire was an empire in the sense of violence, with a specific cultural violence. Let's remember, fortunately, Czechs were closed that border of Ottoman space, but were not involved like Hungarians, or Austria was the first line who defended Turkish appearance in this part of the Europe. But while speaking about specific Ottoman cultural violence, let's remember about the human taxation in the Ottoman Empire. How it could be that 40 families of Osman family became millions. It's because of human taxation. Armenians, Georgians, Albanians, Serbs, Greeks, Romanians, Bulgarians, they paid human tax. Mostly they were boys. Those boys became Yanicharis. What is Yanichari? In Turkish it means new forces. They were trained as soldiers, and mostly they were used against modern nations. So this human taxation played a crucial role for Turkish national building and state building. One of the early examples of decision-making of destroying Armenians we found in Sultan's edict back in 1726. Turkish troops were stopped in the southern mountains region, now called Karabakh. They stopped the way of Ottoman forces to capture Baku, modern Azerbaijani capital. And because of this failure, Sultan decided to destroy that Armenians who spoiled his programs. This is one of the early examples of Ottoman decision to destroy Armenians who blocked the expansionist plans. The second episode in Armenian pre-genocide period we already have in late 19th century and early 20th century. Why? Final solution. Why Armenians must be eliminated? Now let's imagine the sick men of Europe. This is the name of the Turkey, losing the territories after each war, after each rebellion. Greeks proclaimed independence with the help of Europeans, of course. Serbians, Romanians, Albanians, Muslim Albanians revolted against Ottomans. Now, the important task for Ottomans became new nationhood, new state of Turkey, which must be cleaned of any alien elements. Alien elements were considered mostly Christian minorities, Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians. How to implement this? We have Sultan regime, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, known as Great Assassin or Bloody Sultan in European press. You will find his iconic image, bloody hands and the bodies surrounding, in many, many newspapers. Sultan, in order to prevent any reprisals from Armenians, from 1894 to 1896 organized mass atrocities to scare Armenians, to speak about autonomy, to speak about potential independence, because Armenians, being under supremacy of the dominant Muslim element, they also watched that what's going on in Europe. Serbs are free, Bulgarians are free, Romanians are free, Greeks are free, Albanians are free. Why we have to stay under Ottoman yoke? But Turks consider this as a great challenge. In order to solve this issue, new government which overthrown the sultans in 1908, known as Ittihad ve Terakki or Young Turkish Government, they came into power and they started to think about the future nation state. Future nation state must be cleaned from any minority. But how to do this? Under what pretext? It's not easy, because European politics, great powers of that time, every time used Armenian issue, Armenian question, the status of minorities, the suppressed condition of minorities to gain more capitulation, the system of capitulation, or more gains in Turkish economy and politics. First World War. First World War was the good occasion to implement this diabolic policy. But before the First World War, during the secret meetings of Young Turks in 1913 and 1914, it was already decided, before the war started, it was already decided to solve Armenian question through the elimination of Armenians. We have a lot of eyewitness accounts and the primary sources telling about the decision Young Turks passed before the war. But they were feeling that something is coming and the war. They were feeling that First World War will happen. This is also very important. In 1912 and 1913, they were feeling that something will happen in Europe. That's why they started to prepare for this. First World War started. Now I'm speaking about the stages of the genocide. Decision making, it's happened before the war. They decided to solve the issue. It was during the interview. It was, of course, not a public announcement, but we checked also Ottoman documents, what was decided during the secret meetings of Young Turks. When First World War started, Young Turks tried to utilize Islam as a mobilizing force. Of course, we cannot blame on religion. Islam is not the cause of the genocide. But Young Turks, who by the way mostly were atheists, racist atheists, they tried to use heavily Islam in order to get a sympathy and to mobilize Turks and Kurds for committing the genocide. Otherwise, it could be total failure. No one will participate. But Islam was instrumentalized for mass destruction. What kind of any motivations played a crucial role? Let's remember that genocide is also economy. When you destroy the group, the Holocaust is also example of that policy. You own the property of victims. Their houses, their property, it's yours. Or government confiscate them. In order to provide, in order to secure mass mobilization, government also tried to confiscate Armenian property for war purposes. They need money, of course, but also they left also looting and killing. In Turkish case, which is a little different from Holocaust, Turks also targeted children. Children and women became also target for other crime, genocidal crime. They were forcibly Islamized or Turkified. Many women and females, young females, were taken to harems, and the boys, tens of thousands, boys and girls, were Turkified. They lost their identity. Now, big percentage of modern Kurdish and Turkish population in Turkey, they have Armenian blood, they have Greek blood, but part of them know that about their grandma. They now started to think about the identity, but many of them, they lost connection. So this is other part of Armenian genocide. First stage of Armenian genocide, when the war started, Enver Pasha, war minister, wanted to capture the center of Caucasus, Russian Caucasus, Tiflis, modern Georgia's capital, Tbilisi. But Third Army suffered heavy defeat in a winter campaign. Nearly 1/3 of Turkish soldiers were frozen to death during the winter campaign. Enver needed scapegoats. To whom to blame for this disastrous defeat? Of course, Armenians. It's easy. 80,000 Armenian soldiers were in Ottoman army to defend their homeland. They were conscripts. Shortly after the Sarigamish defeat, they were disarmed, used as water battalion soldiers, and killed in February 1915. We commemorate Armenian genocide in April 24. This is a symbolic day for all Armenians. What a day it is, April 24. We know from world history that this is the day of landing of allies in Dardanelles. Dardanelles operation which started in very same day, April 24. But in April 24, it's a day when 200 Armenian intellectuals were arrested in Istanbul only, in Constantinople, and shortly afterwards, on the way to exile, most of them were severely killed. So you see the mechanism. Killing of Armenian men capable to defend in army. So no one will resist back. It's a mechanism. Second stage, it's killing of Armenian intellectuals. No one will protest, no one will write. All Armenian newspapers were shot. And the third stage is the most horrible. Deportation of women, children, and old people. Deportation means walking 400-500 miles with no supplies under heavy sun, and the main destination is northern Syrian deserts. Look at the map. You see the always show the mass atrocity places. There's a Black Sea to have geographical orientation. Mostly from European part of Turkey, deportation caravans, they were mostly walking. In the rare cases, railroad, Berlin-Baghdad railroad was used. But those caravans of rail were non-stop. No supplies and no stops. Many of them died in the cars, railroad cars, in the trains, because it was non-stop raid to the northern Syria. Nearly 300,000 reached to final destination. Those were camps. I already named them. Deir Zor, in other words, this is Armenian Auschwitz, Meskene and Raqqa. On a news line today, you will hear the name Raqqa, because there are heavy fighting now between Kurdish, ISIS, and pro-government Syrian forces. This triangle became a huge graveyard for nearly 500,000 Armenians. Even now, if you dig there, the soil, you will find human remains. Eyewitnesses, mostly German soldiers and officials who were allies of Turkey, who took a lot of photos. Some of them even were arrested for violating Ottoman censorship law. It was strictly prohibited to take photos. Some officials took and they were arrested. Some German officials returned back Turkish accomplishments and the medals. Returning to Constantinople, they throw the medals to the war ministry, saying, what we witnessed, we don't want to receive any medals and orders from this government. Eyewitness also tell the horrible story how Euphrates, this is huge river, larger than any other river in the region, because of human bodies thrown in the Euphrates, and it made a natural dam of bodies. Euphrates changed the natural flow. Can you imagine huge river with a half-kilometer distance from one shore to another, because of heavy human bodies which stopped the natural flow of the river. Euphrates changed the natural river bank for 5 kilometers. When it returned back to the usual flow, many human remains still were visible. All the field was covered with human bones. Now, this is mapping of genocide is also important. We have a lot of maps of Holocaust in given country. Armenian genocide history is mapped in this way mostly. Now we are working on the Atlas of Armenian Genocide. It's one of the important research we are working now. Now, geographically, you have to imagine that this is part of the eastern Turkey, historically known as Armenia, and the northern Syria and partly Iraq. In some places, Armenians tried to resist. Of course, they understood that they had no chance, because they are cut from the outside world in mountains area. Sometimes Turkish government brought regular army troops to suppress those who tried to defend themselves. The heroic pages are one city defense in 1915. One now is the capital of Turkish Kurdistan. But another important and wonderful story, it's a Musadag fighting. 53 days, Armenian youngsters, women and old people, 4,000 of them, they barricaded themselves and defended themselves on the mountain called Musa or Moses. 53 days with no supplies and running out ammunition and food. No chance, because from Palestine front, Turkish government brought regular army troops to destroy them. They understand that there is no chance. The only hope was from the sea. And the cross they put on the hill, French navymen saw that. 2 flags with the red cross, another flag saying Christians are under danger, rescue. So they opened fire to the Turkish position, and in the world history, unprecedented evacuation occurred. 4,000 Armenian civilians were taken on board of French warships, 5 warships, and evacuated to Port Said in Egypt. This is a very interesting story, connected also with Prague. You know that Franz Werfel, Jewish writer who was born in, also considered as an Austrian writer mostly because he was living in Austria, and he left during the Second World War because his works were restricted and Nazis also banned his works. He was born in Prague. The story of 40 days of Musadag is an amazing story. everyone who knows about Armenian genocide, and Armenians in general, they know because of Franz Werfel. They know because of this wonderful novel. The novel is translated in many, many languages. Many languages. We got from Israeli ambassador recently Hebrew translation back in 1934. It was amazing, 2 volume translation. And there is a wonderful and amazing connection of this story with the ghetto fightings during the Second World War in many Jewish ghettos who started to fight against Nazis. The nighttime reading, the main reading was 40 Days of Musadab. It is very interesting story. But before the Holocaust started, before the Second World War, another interesting story happened with this novel. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, famous movie producer in Hollywood, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, back in 1934, couple of years after novel was printed, the first edition in German appeared in 1933, also symbolic date. In 1935, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer planned to shoot a movie based on this amazing story. But soon it was banned because Turkish government pressed on American government to get the idea of shooting this movie. And it didn't happen. Movie never appeared and it never was shot. Can you imagine that after 20 years, new government, which always claimed that they had no any connection with Armenian genocide, started to fight against the memory. 20 years, it's a very limited part in the history and memory, but still first generation is a lot. But can you imagine that government worked with another government to suppress shooting a movie because of danger of that story? Danger because 4,000 youngsters were fighting against regular Turkish army troops and they were successful in beating them. But general story is connected with Turkish history and memory. It's connected with the world history and memory. The suppression and selectiveness in the memory, it's became, unfortunately, part of the modern days politics. Now, there are a lot of manipulations with the Armenian genocide, and not only with Armenian genocide. And as I said, we still witnessed many cases of manipulations, how the human suffering, the crime of genocide and its consequences became bargaining token in the world politics. Why it's important to talk about all cases of the genocide and how we can educate people locally. For example, what connection Armenian genocide could have with the Czech history and memory? From the first side, nothing closer. But I brought one important example which is very educative. This is Franz Werfel and 40 Days of Musadab. Another important source for teaching it's Karel Hansa. Technical problems, sorry. Could you help with the full screen version? Karel Hansa, the translation of this memoir, very important Czech source on Armenian genocide. He traveled in Anatolia, Asia Minor. He was in the places of the mass crimes occurred. He witnessed the traces of the genocide. I strongly suggest to find the original publication back in 1930s, but also there is a reprint of this work. Two important, maybe small, but very important connection of Czech history and memory in personalities. So those important two links could be helpful to start the reading and study in Armenian genocide, and also making the part as an education. Genocide education is also important. Holocaust education is also important. Speaking in schools and university classes about Greeks and Assyrians, about their experience, also important. But important tool is personalizing and linking all the history and memories locally. What connection this or that genocide has with the local history and memory? This is a shortcut, it's a short way to explain how it is important. And the 40 Days of Musa Dagh is important. Could be also not a novel, but a manual to start to learn about the Armenian genocide. I'm happy that 3 years ago we signed a cooperation agreement with the Lidice Memorial. It's a 3 years old photo. We cooperate because our mission and our goals are the same. We deal with the history and memory. We deal with the necessity of preservation of memory of people who suffered. And while speaking about mass atrocities, genocide, and the Holocaust, we have to remember that human suffering is universal. We cannot select out. We cannot select from the time or number of victims. Number is not important. As I said, genocide is not a crime of statistics. It deals with the human fates. And it is important to study all genocide in comparative perspective. To compare, I strongly suggest you, when you start genocide studies and select the topics, pay attention on selective studies. I'm sorry, not a selective, but comparative studies. It's important for the academic world. It's important to find similarities between genocides. And maybe the last sentence before we go to the break and start question and answer session. Let me again, I'm sorry, but I have to again bring back the important sentence I told you. It's very hard to go in the field. It's very hard to live with the fates and experience of the victims, survivors. But your decision, it's a crucial one. You start a big part, you start a big road in your life. You became responsible for millions of lives. You became their voices. And this is very moral. And is very honest. It is wonderful because you will be privileged to speak instead of them. They couldn't, but while reading survivors' notes, handwritten or printed, we became one of theirs. This is important for a person who start genocide study to imagine that instead of this girl, this man, these children would be me, you, our children. That's why this field is very sensitive, and I wish good start for all of you in your very noble mission in genocide studies. Thank you very much. Armenian genocide is recorded in many eyewitness accounts of non-Armenians, diplomats, eyewitnesses, military people in the field. One of the important sources on Armenian genocide, it is Ambassador Morgenthau's story. Henry Morgenthau was ambassador of the United States from 1913 to 1916 when US entered in the war. It was printed in 1918 during the time of Armenian genocide. This is the quote from the Ambassador Morgenthau's story. Several times, Morgenthau is a Jew. He's a very famous family in the United States. Several times he met with the young Turkish leaders. Interior Minister Talat Pasha, he was speaking about Armenians with Enver Pasha, War Minister, and Cemal Pasha, Navy Minister. So three triumvirate who were main architects, main decision makers on Armenian genocide. So This important quote is from one of the communication of Ambassador Morgenthau with Talat Pasha. Now, next slide will be the answer of Morgenthau. Morgenthau is on the right-hand side and Talat on the left. This is the question asked by Talat to Morgenthau. This communication had a terrible continuation because the next Talat asked to Morgenthau was about the insurance policies and bank accounts of Armenians killed. He said, many Ottoman Armenians had accounts in American banks and insurance companies. They gone. But those were our citizens and the money, their money belongs to the state. Can you organize payment of the Armenians who were killed by the very Ottoman state? They asked money of the victims. Morgenthau was shocked. So the main decision maker saying, why you disturb us killing, getting the reply from Morgenthau, he asked about money of the victims kept in American insurance companies and American banks. Important reaction. When genocide as a large-scale atrocity occurs, it also creates some reaction. Can you imagine that it was the First World War, all the war, Europe especially, were involved in the large fightings in the front lines everywhere in the East and West. But shortly afterwards, the information about mass atrocities and mass killings of Armenians were spread. France, Great Britain, and Russia appeared with the joint declaration. This document from the State Department, American Archives, first time in the world history, indicated very important expression: crime against humanity and civilization. But important word was before that expression. It says new crime of Turkey against humanity and civilization. So it referred also previous atrocities. This expression and this document were quoted in the Nuremberg trials as a first case in the world history and international law when the government and representative of government were named as responsible for killing and treating their subjects. Before that, they are subjects. Any government can do what they can do and what they want to with the subjects. But first time in this declaration, it was said that Turkish government, given country's government and the regime and the policymakers will carry responsibility for such crimes, which were named as a crime against humanity and civilization. And you know the term genocide was coined by Raphael Lemkin, a Polish lawyer of Jewish origin, back in 1944. And Raphael Lemkin, the architect of the UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Genocide, he named two cases of the genocide. In interview to American TV station, he said genocide occurred against Armenians and against Jews. So Armenian, he was a lawyer who were at the trials of Solomon Tehlirian. This young person, the only survivor of this family, shot dead Talat Pasha, who communicated with Morgenthau in Berlin in 1921. He was acquitted. Raphael Lemkin was at the time in the hearings. And the main question was, why killing one person is a crime and killer must be punished, but the killing of millions, how we can punish killers of the millions? There were no precedent. But in Armenian genocide also there was a first case of trial of the perpetrators. After the war, Turkish military tribunals were set in 1918, 1919, and the main organizers were sentenced to death. Talat, Enver, Cemal, and Said Halim, Prime Minister of Turkey, they were sentenced to death, but they escaped with the German help. Armenian special organization called Nemesis, or Revenge, was formed in 1919, and they smoked out the main organizers of the genocide, and they were killed in Roma, in Berlin, and Tbilisi between 1921, 1922. So some extra information as a part of my lecture. Now let's open the question and answer session. I will be glad if you have questions. Lady was first.
Well, I want to ask you a question about the Armenian genocide, about the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, about modern times. Can it be considered as, does it have something in common with Armenian genocide, the very actual issue between Turkey and Azerbaijan?
It's a good question. Not easy one to answer, but of course I have to answer to your question. You remember, if we speak about Nagorno-Karabakh, we have to bring some background, why this appeared. That's why this issue appeared in general and created many mass atrocities, not only against Armenians, but also Armenians replied back. I'm speaking honestly and openly, without hiding any part of the conflict. Back in 1918, Young Turks created 4 artificial states. 4 artificial, 3 of them on the Caucasus, 1 in Thrace. The main idea was to use local Turkic-speaking Muslims in order to attach those territories to modern Turkey. So it was a project of Young Turks and Kemalists. 1 state was Azerbaijan. The name Azerbaijan, its real historical name, which northern Iranian provinces are named. If you look at the map, northern provinces of Iran, they called Aderpatagan or Azerbaijan. But Young Turks intentionally they transferred this name to the northern territories from the river Arax. The idea was to attach artificially made state with the Turkish forces, with the help of Turkish forces, because local Muslims resisted Turkish intention to name this as Azerbaijan. 800 local Muslims were hanged by Turkish military for resisting to be conscripts in the Ottoman army. 800 of them were killed because they resisted against the Turks. So this was a policy when Nagorno-Karabakh issue appeared as a part of Turkish strategy of artificial state building. But this strategy was continued by Bolsheviks. They never erased the name Azerbaijan. They never said no such country existed. They took the idea, very young Turkish idea, that because they also wanted to have access to the hot waters, Persian Gulf, Mediterranean, and they wanted to use the same template, attaching both territories and making it as a part of Soviet Union. Now, if you remember the pogroms in the Soviet Union, first nationalist pogroms started in Azerbaijan in 1988, February, in Sumgait. This was shocking for Soviets because we were educated that we live in a Soviet family of nations, everything is okay, everyone loves and respects each other. And within 3 days, city was closed for rampage, for bloody massacre. They hunted down Armenians everywhere. The number of victims, official victims, the number official, it's 26 Armenians and 6 Azeris during the self-defense or Soviet troops opened fire were killed. But this was the beginning. Next wave of anti-Armenian pogrom started in November '88, which created also anti-Azerbaijani. There were no pogroms or victims as such, but many became refugees. 200,000 Armenians in 1988, and nearly 400 within 2 years escaped from Azerbaijan, and 180 Azeris escaped from Armenia to Azerbaijan mainly. The large pogrom, next pogrom, occurred in very capital city in January 1990. But if you follow Azerbaijani official propaganda text, Soviet troops organized massacre of Azerbaijanis in January 14 when military entered into the Azerbaijani capital. But Soviet politics was evident. They left Armenians to suffer pogroms. Nearly 100 Armenians were killed. Soviet troops were waiting. And they entered Baku shortly after pogroms ceased with the main idea to keep Soviet power in Azerbaijan, which was under the danger. This was Soviet politics. But now, artificially to bring both cases of 1915-22 genocide with modern Azerbaijani politics, it's not correct. But for Armenian public memory, there is an evident association. Why it is, on what it is grounded. Azerbaijani sometimes identify themselves as Turks. Wrongly, they call them Tatars. It's a wrong name. Azerbaijan also, Azerbaijanis, they have specific interesting culture. But in the public memory and in the politics especially, when leaders of Azerbaijan and Turkey appear under the slogan "One Nation and Two States," it creates the feeling of danger, threat to Armenians. Because for Armenians and some people in Caucasus, we name Turks, Anatolian Turks and Caucasian Turks. It is the Turkic-speaking nation. That's why association with Anatolians quickly is associated with the both people. And can you imagine that the first victims during the border clashes spontaneously were buried in a Tzizernagabert memorial, first Armenian victims of border clashes. Still we have graves from different part of the story. Again, referring to your question, we cannot say that this is part of the general genocide which started in 1915, but there are many linkages which create for ordinary Armenian to think about it. First of all, slogan, one nation, like we are Turks but divided into two countries. Turkey tried by all means to have land access with Azerbaijan. Part of Armenians blocking the access, the common border between Azerbaijan and Turkey. So by all means they try to convince Armenia to make land exchanges, to have proximity, to have a common border with Azerbaijan. Also, Iran is not interested in it because northern provinces are populated by Turkish-speaking Azerbaijanis, and Turkey by all means try to instigate anti-Iranian feelings. So, referring to the public memory, it exists, the danger and the association with the 1915 genocide and modern pogroms, it's evident. But another policy, interesting policy, is artificial genocidal policy by Azerbaijani leadership. There are genocide memorials in Azerbaijan, but the people in Azerbaijan, they don't know really what is this. Can you imagine that in 1998, 4 years after ceasefire was signed, President of Azerbaijan signed a decree saying that Azerbaijanis are victims of genocide. The state, the leader, decide that the Azerbaijani people are victims of genocide. Who are perpetrators? Of course, Armenians. Why Armenians? Because Russians brought Armenians into Caucasus, and this was the beginning of Azerbaijani genocide. Such artificial manipulation of genocide is another danger. Another danger is also in rhetoric in the Ukrainian case. Every case of slaughter or crime, heavily genocide word is used. This bring manipulations with the very notion of the genocide. Of course, peace is the best thing we can provide in the Caucasus. I was speaking with my Azeri colleague, he is in the audience, that the best way that three people and many other peoples in Caucasus can live in a peace and flourish, but the prices are very heavy. Not only internally there are a lot of manipulations, but also external players sometimes use Caucasus politics for their own benefits, for their own interest. That's why the clashes and the tectonic quakes in the Caucasus always existed, because Caucasus, rich with the oil, with the access to the Black Sea, in the juncture of north and south, east and west, and the highland is a center. Those who control the Armenian highland, they control Mesopotamia and until the Arabian oilfields. That's why interests are permanent in this and in this land. And divide and rule principle, old age, is always actual for many players, unfortunately. Yes, please.
How long have been Armenian land under Ottoman Empire in historic time when Turkey
you know that in 1453 Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople. The extension of the borders of empire was towards the European territories, capturing the Balkans, but also to the east, Asia Minor and historical Armenia. First time Ottoman troops appeared in historical Armenian territory in 1514. And during two waves of bloody wars between Iran and Turkey, Ottoman Turkey, Armenia, historical Armenia, was divided into two parts. Now we heavily use also Eastern Armenia, Western Armenia. 1555, first division of Armenia between Iran and Turkey. Next division occurred in 1639. But other divisions followed shortly after Russians appeared in the Caucasus. During the Russian-Turkish and Russian-Iranian war between 1820 and 1829, eastern part of Armenia fell under Russian control. This is nearly modern Armenia. But the rest were under Ottoman, Western Armenia, under Ottoman rule, and small part under Iranian. Yes, please.
I want to ask you, from your own point of view, is there something that you can say that there's unique in the Armenian genocide compared to other genocides, or maybe just the Holocaust? Something that didn't occur in other genocides?
No, as a genocide scholar, I cannot say that any case of genocide is unique. Let's put it this way. Holocaust is unique. Armenian genocide is unique. Cambodian genocide is unique. Unique because of time and because of the mechanism, because of consequences. But for me, any genocide and genocide victim is universal. I cannot select out, say this is the best example of the genocide, this is classical example, but we have to be careful with the manipulation and politicization of the crime. Let's put your question in a different way a little bit. What kind of aspects from Armenian genocide could be interesting, and what kind of linkages it has with the other genocide which followed? For example, it is interesting to follow how many German soldiers and officials later became Nazi party members. From the contingent, there were 18,000 Germans in Turkey. They witnessed medical experiences. They witnessed destruction, using modern technologies of that time, First World War, using the train, for example. We know exactly that many of them, for example, Schobner Richter, general, one of the advisors of Hitler, he was in Ottoman army as an instructor and witnessed personally how Armenians were treated. The garrison general of Budapest, you know, Hungarian Jews experience, horrible experience during the Holocaust. The German general was in Ottoman Empire at that time. Another example is Ober-Salzberg meeting. A couple of days before invasion into Poland, secret meeting at Ober-Salzberg with the generals, Hitler declared. Actually, I will not quote, I want to bring the exact quotation from United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. In the wall you can read that. Can you read? I will read for you. I have issued the comment, and I will have anybody who utters but one word of criticism executed by a firing squad. That our war aim does not consist in reaching certain lines, but in the physical destruction of the enemy. Accordingly, I have placed my deadhead formations in readiness for the present only in the east, with orders to them to send to death mercilessly and without compassion men, women and children of Polish derivation and language. Only thus shall we gain the living space, Lebensraum, which we need. Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of Armenians? These Hitler's words said secretly. It was a secret meeting with no reporters, but several generals made quotes in the notebooks. That's why we know this quotation. Now, how Hitler learned the story about the Armenian genocide? Because among the advisors of Hitler were former soldiers and officials who were during the First World War time in Ottoman Empire. Another linkage between First World War, Armenian genocide, and Holocaust. Another linkage I brought with the case of punishing criminals in 1919 trials, when the first time in the world history perpetrators who committed mass atrocities or crimes against humanity and civilization were sentenced to death. And this was quoted as a precedent in the Nuremberg trial. Now imagine 1950 and 1945, in international law, nothing changed. Nothing new was in international law between these 30 years. So Armenian genocide perpetrators were treated according to that international law which existed in 1945 during the Nuremberg trial. But locally they were treated by military tribunals in Turkey, and war crimes were treated in Nuremberg. But international law that time, this is what I mean, international law was the same. Nothing new appeared during the Nuremberg. You can find a lot of parallels, for example, in medical experience. For example, typhus. Turkish doctors heavily used Armenian wounded, Armenian children for some medical experiences between 1915 to 1917. And some German doctors also witnessed that. Any other questions?
Possible comparison between Nazi ideology and Young Turks ideology. Are there any similarities between these two ideologies?
Of course, there are very nice scholars who did the research in comparison of both ideologies. Young Turks were racist. For them, the main idea was to destroy the minorities bourgeoisies, to destroy even minority sport clubs even. Recently, I published a study how Young Turks tried to clean all Turkish football teams and Turkish clubs from Christians. They said, those who have Greek or Armenian players in the team, they are not patriots. So exclusion in every sphere is an important part of this decision making in genocide implementation. Young Turkish ideology, it was for, if you put in a very banal way, it was Turkey for Turks. They never saw any possibility that any other minority will live in a future Turkey. As for Nazi ideology, the main similarity is targeting of the groups. To give mass participation, to prove their patriotism, they try to target minority groups who are successful economically, first of all. A destruction of Jews as an economically and culturally successful group in Europe and in Armenia is also another parallel. I strongly suggest you to read one important work which was printed last year. The author's name is Ihrik, Stefan Ihrik, if I'm not mistaken. The title of book is Ataturk in Nazi Imagination. It's very interesting. It's just to answer to your question in one monograph, how Nazis regarded Ataturk and Turkish politics in early Republican period as a model for Germany. And the Führer and Volkisch state, Führer is Ataturk in Turkish case, and Führer leader in a German case. Volkisch state is an ideology taken from Turkish experience. Volkisch, meaning folk, it's a nation. Nation are Turks. And Hitler, I'm quoting from that important work I already named, Ataturk in Nazi Imagination. Hitler once said, I had two teachers in my life. First is Ataturk, the second is Mussolini.
More questions?
Yes, please.
I want to ask you if there was some difference in treating the victims based in the other Christian communities, which were also part of the genocide, the Assyrians and the Greeks. They were treated differently from the Armenians or not.
This is an important question, thank you very much. In a Greek case, there was a very specific moment. There was a Greece as a state, and there were Turkic minorities in Greece. So, while treating Greek people in Trabzon, Pontus, the Pontus Greek community became heavily massacred in early 20th century. Young Turks were scared that if they treat Greeks like Armenians, the same fate will occur with a Turkic-speaking population in Greece. So this makes difference because there was no Armenian state at that time. They treated Armenians with free hands, let's put it this way. But they were a little bit scared that Turks will be killed in Greece in a reply of Greek massacres. Another interesting issue is that at the end of the war, after destroying of Smyrna, you know that when Kemalists entered in Smyrna in September 1922, 30,000 Armenian and Greeks were destroyed in flames. They were burned alive, literally speaking. This was the end of Christianity in Asia Minor. Izmir now is a new city because Greek, Armenian, and the European part is absolutely destroyed. Now, two countries, two governments, Venizelos and Ataturk, agreed on exchange. At the end of the war, after massacres, Greek government accepted Pontian Greeks and who remained, Greek population, they were taken to Greece, and Turkic population left to Anatolia. So population exchange in some way closed the issue. I was in Greece last year. You know, May 19 is considered as a day of remembrance of Greek genocide victims. And in our memorial, that day is a day for commemorating Greek victims of the Ottoman genocide. But surprisingly, modern Greece, by all means, tried to escape talking about the Greek experience and Greek cultural heritage, which is also destroyed. Just imagine 3,500 Armenian churches are destroyed fully, according to UNESCO. The same fate with the Greek churches. In good case, churches turn it into mosques, Armenian and Greek. But Greek government now never wants to talk about Greek experience. And this brings a lot of embarrassment among the Pontian Greeks especially. But of course, you know that there are a lot of tensions between Greece and Turkey. Another example are Assyrians. Some Assyrians escaped to Armenia. But if we check the decision making as a document related to Islamization, related to hiding the traces of mass killing fields, in Assyrian case there was no clear decision that they have to destroy Assyrians and targeting us. Assyrians became co-victims together with Armenians because they were populated in a mixed regions. So they were living next to Armenians. In the Greek case, the sensitive moment was Greeks were not targeted during the wartime. But when Greek armies landed in Asia Minor and Ataturk's movement started, Greeks became victims of the genocidal crimes too. Yes, please.
It is my understanding that the Turkish government continues to either deny or completely push out the issue of Armenian genocide. I'm curious, what is your estimation about future developments on this particular problem?
Thank you for the question. We genocide scholars sometimes say that denial is the last stage in the genocide. When government or regime committed genocide, it confiscated goods, it continued to use economic benefits left from the victims group, but the denial, it's the last stage of what happened. My colleague from Israel Charney, named denialism as psychiatric issue. Just can you imagine that while looking on the white-collar stuff, you have to prove that this is black stuff? This is really a psychiatric issue. You know the truth is this one, you understand consciously, that subconsciously, that this is right, but you have to prove the different. Now, any future, what is the future prospects of the denial? Could it be successful for new generation of Turks? I do hope that new generation, which unfortunately are educated and trained in very nationalistic atmosphere in schools and in army, just imagine that everyone in the morning, among them also Armenians who are left in Istanbul, Greeks who are left in Istanbul, every morning classes start, they have to repeat one sentence, quote from Ataturk, "What a happiness that I was born as a Turk." This is everyday process. Before the classes start, every school children must tell this at the beginning of the day. Something reminds me my years in Soviet school. We also had some traditions as a pioneers, as a Komsomol. We do hope that not the government is hopeless. to expect that government one day will recognize and say some words of pardon. They will never do that. I will explain why. A little longer answer, but this will bring some insights on the question. If new generation will be strong enough to deal with their own history and memory, this is only solution for the question. There are Turkish intellectuals, new generation, people who say sorry for what we committed. They said in a written way in the letters submitted 3 years ago, they say this word in Armenian Genocide Museum. This is the only hope, that society will come to the conclusion that something worst happened in their history. Because Armenian genocide is not a history of Armenian suffering. It's also an important part of Turkish history and memory. Denialism is hopeless. Just imagine that in one country you denied what happened, but whole the world knew the truth. In academic field also, if you try to prove bringing new theories or new documents, which is impossible to find because some Turkish archives are still closed. For example, Atatürk's archives and general staff archives still is closed for Turkish researchers. If you ask me why, carefully I can understand, I will explain in this way, because the proof documents related to the trial of young Turks are still there. If not destroyed, all the proof, all the documentation, telegrams, coded telegrams, letters are still kept in the general staff archives in Turkey. That's why it's closed. And how trial happened in 1919. It is not that the military tribunal said, okay, you are perpetrator, Talat Pasha, you are also perpetrated, Enver Pasha. Within half a year, in whole Turkey, they collected evidence. The proof that this was pre-planned crime, and it was organized crime. And since Ottoman legal system is a French, based on French legal code, they needed proof. Letters, coded telegrams, military documents, they collected proofs. And based on those truth, but not rather verbal evidences that someone will cancel this is criminals or those are criminals. Based on documents, Ottoman military trials passed life sentence to main perpetrators of Armenian genocide, accusing them for bringing Turkey into the war.
This is the first accusation. The second accusation for destruction of the Christian population of the empire, based on evidence. Denialism is hopeless, again I'm stating, because in academic world, the person who tries to explain that Holocaust is a forgery.
Armenian genocide is a mythical thing, or Rwandan case is just nothing happened. The label is clear for such kind of people, denialists. Turkey heavily pay money to the chairs. They open chairs for Ottoman research, but the main task for such chairs is denialism. Until recently, Turkish government paid local pocket money to the students studying in American university for destruction of the books. For example, if you are a student, you have connection with the local embassy. Local embassy has small funding for you. You can order from university library a book related to Armenian genocide. You can destroy it or throw away, and you can pay money instead of that. So this was a mechanism. Scholars, American scholars in 1995, there's a higher education chronicle, printed open letter to the United States government asking to protect them from the Turkish
interference. Embassies and ambassadors, Turkish ambassadors,
are very active. Any places they will hear that academic activism conference or exhibition will be, they will appear at the same place in order to prevent this or that exhibition or book presentation to occur. I'm very surprised that no one is from there this time. Maybe it is good, but this main instruction for all embassies to fight against any possible speaking about Armenian genocide, discussion in parliaments or exhibition, they appear trying to convince that they have their own part of the truth or explanation of what happened.
Do you think that Turkey is under Tayyip Erdogan a little bit harder, or I think it's a little bit extreme? The direction, from my point of view, is a little bit bad. I don't know.
If you remember, both countries signed protocols in 2009. It was very hard for Armenia, who had genocide remembrances, to sign any agreement with Turkey. The protocols say that border will be opened, bilateral relations will be established, and even Armenian side agreed for discussion some problematic historical issues. It was not mentioned that genocide will be discussed, but we, Armenian side, it was a big retreat from our initial position. But what Turkish side did, both sides put their signatures, but before ratification in parliament, Turkey brought another precondition for Armenia, which was not in the protocols. And you know who brokered? State Secretary Hillary Clinton was at the signing, Lavrov, Foreign Minister, Swiss Foreign Minister, and the Germany Foreign Minister. In Swiss, in Zurich, they were present as a signing. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Davutoglu, that time, now Prime Minister, and Armenian Minister of Foreign Affairs, they put signatures, but Turkey violated all the agreements and put another condition related to Azerbaijan. This was not in the text. They said they will ratify this document if Armenia returned back the territory of Karabakh to Azerbaijan. It was not absolutely in agreement. So all the parts present at the signing ceremony, they said Turkey destroyed all this process of reconciliation. Now, speaking about Erdogan, it was horrible to see the video footage when the peaceful demonstration was bombed. 2 bombs killed. This was the bloodiest terrorist attack in a Turkish history. Nearly 100 were killed in a very horrible way. You can imagine the explosion of suicide bombers. 500 were wounded that time. What government did? They gassed the field. When the victims were still alive, some of them died, some of them were wounded on the ground. They gassed the territory, and police started to attack those who survived. Now it's a big blame and blow on the Erdogan government, and they did not postpone this is second round of the elections. I think this episode, and there were many parallels, by the way, in political rhetoric, massacre. They used massacre, and now the titles in Turkish newspaper say, "This time you want to massacre Kurds." It's a direct hint to Armenian case. Because it was horrible to see that a lot of bodies in a square fighting for death and life, a lot of wounded, nearly 500 wounded, and government, instead of sending ambulance appeared very late there, they sent police cars and they started to gas the field. And those who tried to save the lives, they were gassed. And a lot of Turks, they brought the parallels and association with the Armenian case, how the government treat humans. And I think they had very limited chance for second round of elections. It is good or not, I don't think so, because if we put the Turkish situation in global Middle Eastern situation, everything changes in Middle East on a daily basis. You never know. 5 states ceased to exist. Iraq, Yemen, Syria, in North Africa. So it became like a volcano region, every time eruption. And it's very close to Armenian border. For us, any disturbances in Turkey, any uprisal, revolution is also affect our security. It's not that we are thinking that everything bad for Turkey and Turks is good for Armenia. We understand sensibility of the situation, because if Turkish government, right-wing government will be formed and they will start to treat Kurdish, Islamic Kurdish population the way as they treated Armenians and Greek, can you imagine humanitarian crisis of refugee flow to Armenia? Even the border is closed. We cannot close border when people are targeted for genocidal crimes. So this is perspectives, unhappy perspectives of the regional developments.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, the time is over today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your patience and attention, and I do hope that we'll communicate not in this format, lecture and hearing my lecture, but also please, I left here the contacts of the museum. You can visit our website. My email, my personal email, you can find on the website. Any questions you think we can be helpful, or me as a director, as a specialist in Armenian genocide can be helpful, please write anytime you want. We'll try to be helpful within a short period of time. Thank you very much.